Number 10. Jack Black. Because of Jack Black's love of FNAF, with him playing it on Markiplier's channel with his son and making FNAF TikToks, people have theorized that he might be in the movie. Casting and updates on production have been slim to none, and while we know the film was slated to start filming this spring, we don't really know if it's started yet, or what is going on, or when it was actually set to start other than spring, or who is in it. So many questions. Still, considering Jack Black's interests and the fact that he is a talented and all-around entertaining actor, I would not be surprised if he appeared in the film. The question is, who should he play? Phone guy? William Afton? One of the employees at Freddy Fazbear's? Or maybe he could be Scott Cawthon himself at some point in the movie. Scott Cawthon, after all, has inserted himself into the world as a game developer.
Five Nights at Freddy's. That's where I wanna be. Five Nights at Freddy's.
And at 9, Real Pizzeria. Before the release of FNAF 4, Scott Cawthon's website was littered with references to the numbers 8 and 7 in the source code. This caused many fans, and even dear old Matt, had to think that these were references to the year 1987, where the famous frontal lobe bite occurred. However, other fans believed that these were somehow coordinates, so after plugging them into Google Maps, which I honestly don't understand how you do when you just have a whole bunch of 8s and 7s, I tried it, I couldn't figure it out, but whatever. After putting them into Google Maps, however they did it, they ended up finding a location that it actually gave, and it was an actual pizzeria. Obviously, once this got shared, fans of the franchise started harassing the place, and while it might have been one big coincidence, someone might have caught on beforehand. Kathy Blockus reviewed the pizzeria saying the robots kill. I saw a robot fox killing a kid before in there. Run for your lives out of there. This was actually left 3 weeks before any of the FNAF 4 things were announced, which is when all the 8s and 7s appeared on the website. So while this is incriminating, they also, after saying that, left the place 5 stars. So they obviously are just a fan of the franchise, but yeah. And at 8, Real Life Links. In December of 1993, after Chuck E. Cheese had closed in Aurora, Colorado, Margaret Kohlberg, the manager, was tallying up receipts in the back room. While she does this, Bobby Stevens scrubs down the kitchen, and Sylvia Crawwell, Ben Grant, and Colleen O'Connor all work on cleaning the main party area. However, there is someone hidden in the bathroom, 19-year-old Nathan Dunlap. Earlier that year, he had begun working at this location as a cook, before getting into an argument over his hours, which resulted in him losing his job. He was looking for revenge. He exited the bathroom and began firing, killing everyone in the building. First Sylvia, then Ben, then Colleen, then he went to the kitchen, where the bullet entered Bobby's jaw, sending him flying to the ground. Then Nathan went to the back, where Margaret opened the safe before being shot twice. Nathan then filled her bag with $1,500 cash, arcade tokens, and keychains. Thanks to security cameras, he was promptly arrested and sentenced to death. Obviously, this was the first MatPat game theory, and you know what? It sucks. It sucks that it happened, but it's still quite interesting. And while it may not be true that these events are linked with the first game and the mechanics of the first game, I still think the stories are so close it's impossible not to consider. Although when he came out with this theory, my first thought was, oh, so all I have to do to make a popular horror game is just find a just absolutely brutal story? And it's 7 Dream Theory. Most of you, if not all of you, have heard this before. The theory that everything we have seen in these games is a dream. Sure, Help Wanted gets meta and kind of puts this theory to bed, but what if all the things that we are seeing is still a dream? What if it's not the crying child in his home or in a hospital room waking up every morning? What if it's William Afton dreaming about the insane things that he plans on doing and how well it works out? Well, to him it would be working out because he's a lunatic, but like, time works differently in dreams. You could go a whole month of your life and wake up and it's only been 6 hours. And sure, you're able to control your dreams to an extent, but that's very difficult to do. Once you realize you're dreaming, for the most part, you wake up. So what if he's only considering killing kids right now? And this is his mind telling him not to do it, or to do it, because again, he's cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. Or there is another theory that we are still dreaming through Crying Child, where he is just now further into the dream, trying to justify what he saw so that when he wakes up, he isn't terrified. Or he played the games that then actually had real nightmares about them. In at 6, Withered Bonnie Wants Your Face. In Withered Bonnie's jump scare in FNAF 2, we can actually see him reaching towards your screen, as if reaching for your face. I mean, to be fair, he is missing his, and the other animatronics attack if they see an endoskeleton, but if he had an exposed endoskeleton, why would he attack another one when they're one of his own? Withered Bonnie is also essentially reaching for the Freddy mask that you have on your head, maybe thinking that it can use it to prevent others from attacking him, since his frickin' face is missing, making him absolutely terrifying. Actually, now that I think about it, like, what if the reason they're attacking you is because they can sense the remnant in your body? Maybe, in fact, you do get scooped before becoming the night guard at these pizzerias, and now you look like you should be in a suit because Ennard is inside you, or maybe he's already evacuated at this point. I don't know, it seems like a stretch, but I figured I would put it out there. Halfway through into number 5, the movie isn't real. We all know about the Five Nights at Freddy's movie supposedly in development by the same studio that made Paranormal Activity, Blumhouse Studios. But what if that's not really going to happen? I can see something like this playing out, where instead of making a movie that they say the workers ended up dying on set, causing them to halt production. And while it may get some bad press, a series about dead kids possessing animatronics having real deaths associated with it would be incredible press, especially when the deaths are fake because they only wanted to use the movie as a boost to the games and the books. We've forgotten part of a word on a potential plot, and then that's it. After Scott talked about the scripts on Reddit, he left it. We've heard nothing since, at least to my knowledge. And maybe the studio got the rights to the movie since they know how to handle paranormal press, something like that. Or they have a guy that can do that or something. Maybe they're trying to pull like a Blair Witch kind of thing. I don't know. I just think that the movie would make an actual metric boatload, and since Scott loves rushing games out every other month, it's a surprise that this movie hasn't come out yet, and that's suspicious, if you ask me. And for the Cult of Afton, another theory that I saw from MattBat in Help Wanted's Curse of Dreadbear DLC. In Help Wanted's Curse of Dreadbear DLC, you are tasked with collecting 4 keys from a corn maze while Hollow Foxy chases you. Or I guess Jacko, or not Hollow, no, it is Hollow Foxy. It should be Jacko Foxy, but whatever. Well, if you end up finding all 4 of them, a 5th one appears. A glitchy one, and if you manage to get it, it unlocks a cellar, which looks like the barn that acts like the hub of the game, but it actually isn't, because it's a cellar, not a barn. Either way, this time the banner is torn up, as if it's been decaying for years, and then there's a bunny mask sitting on the table next to an unlit candle, in a circle of potentially blood or maybe red candle wax. Well, you put this mask on and your breathing slows and relaxes, and then the DLC is complete. When you head back to the prize counter, you can wear the mask there again, but if you do this while holding Glitch Trap's plush, you actually seemingly start having a conversation with someone, but you can't hear the other person, you only hear you. This led MattPat to believe that there is a cult forming around worshipping Afton, and maybe even trying to bring him back from hell. And I mean, Vanny brought him back from hell. Maybe she's just not the only one that's possessed, right? I mean, they're gonna have to do something now that we have no idea what happened to literally any of the characters. So, who knows? I sure as hell don't. Getting close to the end in number 3, You're the New Killer. And you know what? This one was right. Well, yes, I did start playing through FNAF VR on the channel. You sure you go watch those. Share and like that video, because I'm not playing the VR game again. Hell no. No matter what you do in the final battle against Glitch Trap, you end up getting stuck in the game while he gets out. And maybe it's not actually the game. It was actually signifying that he was taking over your body and locking you inside your own mind. So, this time he was passing the baton on to you, or at least we thought that he could be, and it was true. I've already said it, right? Like, he was taking over your body, like physically controlling you while you were in your own head. That's what the door was. Princess Quest proved that in Security Breach. We all know this now, okay? We've done the research. I say we've done the research. We played the game. We read the lore bags. We know. It's a thing. It's canon. We play as Vanny in Help Wanted, and now we are the killer. We finally got to play as the killer in a VR game, and you know what? I've been wanting that for years. Although I wanted more specifically a Purple Guy Simulator in VR game, because I'm sadistic like that. But you know what? This is okay. I'm fine with this. We get to play as a killer, and it was a theory a long time ago, and you know what? It happened. So, Yes. Penultimately, and at number 2, special delivery indoctrination. Okay, in the few cults that I've been a part of, we always have an indoctrination, something that you must complete before being able to join the group and ascend to the next level. But what would a cult surrounding praising a man who has sent animatronics after children do? Obviously, it would make you need to survive them. And sure, there are the normal games, but like we don't compare those to real life, right? You need something that's more mobile and accessible. Everyone has a phone, and while it's easy to stay in one place, you can actually move around while using the AR on your phone, making it a more difficult challenge, but also a more telling test of your skill and problem-solving abilities. Plus, they gotta know that you can kill kids. So hey, maybe FNAF AR is not actually, we're not playing as families who are ordering these rogue animatronics. Maybe we're just joining the cult. Finally, in at number 1, ignore help wanted. This is very much wrong, but finally, still on about the cult of Afton. Maybe they were trying to get him out. Originally, we thought we were supposed to ignore help wanted because it was trying to reboot the series. We had no idea what was going on next, and you know what? At the time, it seemed plausible, but now it's not. That's not what we're supposed to be doing. Help Wanted is fully canon despite how confusing it may be. I don't know how you're like putting a sentient code version of a serial killer back inside of his original animatronic with his own head in it. Like, I don't get that. I don't know how that's possible. I don't want to know how that's possible, but you know what, this dude has been burnt so many times. I think that he just needs to accept it and move on. I've said this in literally every other video. Afton just needs to die. Please, save me this suffering. I can't do this again. Or give us like a, what's the one with like, what's the game with Phoenix Wright? You know, like that lawyer game? Let's just do that, but it's like Afton's trial, so that I can be a better lawyer than Amber Heard's. And it's 10 blank. Pointed out by Matt Patton of Fazbear Fright's theory video, the description of the Stitch Wraith given to us by the Fazbear Frights epilogue seems to resemble the character of Blank from the Five Nights at Candy series of fan games. And now with the Fazbear Fanverse initiative being confirmed and giving us another Five Nights at Candy's game, some fans think that this was actually meant to be intentional. Five Nights at Candy's is pretty much the centerpiece of the Fazbear Fanverse initiative, being the most popular and probably the best made game series in the group. So some believe that Scott either had the fanverse in mind prior to its announcement last year, or that the fanverse was a way of explaining the Stitch Wraith's appearance as a way to introduce the fan games into the main series, or as like a little Easter egg to show us that at least they have versions of the games in the main continuity. And at least until we get a full explanation, I'm still gonna believe that it's Blank, because that's
Number
cool.
9, Eggs Benedict's true purpose. Or Michael Afton's true purpose if you prefer. Eggs Benedict, as we said, is widely believed at this point to be Michael Afton, the son of William Afton, who was sent in essence to the sister location, or Circus Baby's entertainment and rental, to free his sister. This comes from a variety of different things, but even though it's still, in theory, just a theory, at this point it's accepted amongst the FNAF community as pretty much a straight up fact. There are a lot of theories that are like this in the FNAF community that we just kind of go like, look, I know it's a theory, but it's not a theory anymore. It's established because we all decided that. And honestly, there is tons of evidence supporting both the identity and the motive of this character that we play in the sister location game. Michael is hoping to help his sister's spirit become free, as it has been trapped for years within Circus Baby. Although ultimately, in terms of the true ending, he kind of fails in doing so, instead getting scooped and then having Ennard sort of stuck within him, along with all the other minds of the animatronics who escaped the sister location, because they're all in Ennard, and then Ennard is in Michael. It's like, what are those dolls? The Matryoshka dolls. Just like you keep opening up, there's different layers. Number 8, Ballora and Circus Baby. Perhaps Ballora and Circus Baby are the only two animatronics who possess souls within sister location. They both seem to be implied to have been people, or at least connected to people, and their emotions in life. Ballora seems to resemble the sadness and hope of William's lost love, and Circus Baby is obviously meant to represent Elizabeth, William Afton's daughter, even seemingly being the reason why Michael Afton came to the facility in the first place, in order to free the trapped soul of his sister from within her. Is it then possible, when it comes to the animatronics, that these are the only two animatronics that actually possess souls, if you will? If this is the case, what makes the other animatronics sentient? Or are there other victims / individuals tied to those other animatronics that we simply don't know about? I have many theories on it, but yes, I think that overall, I think Ballora and Circus Baby, the only two with like spirits or souls in them. Number 7, Mini Rena and Bitty Bab. What if the Mini Renas and Bitty Babs were actually created by Ballora and Circus Baby, respectively? The interesting thing is we don't get close-up looks into the making of these smaller characters and, you know, like their blueprints, their behind the scenes. Is it possible because Ballora and Circus Baby in essence have souls that their individual consciousness might be capable of crafting their own animatronics? I'm not sure. There isn't a ton of evidence to support this theory, but I just kind of thought it was a cool idea, and to me it makes a lot of sense. After all, the Mini Renas look especially crude in comparison to animatronics like Ballora, and honestly any of the other animatronics in this game really. Which could be an indicator that they were, you know, made by someone still figuring out the ins and outs of animatronics. Not a master like William Afton, which, you know, he would probably already be a master at this point. And we already know that Ennard was in part made by Circus Baby, using the other animatronics parts. So it could kind of actually make some weird sense for her to be making animatronics. Number 6, One of the Bites. I can't even believe this one is out there, and still some people believe it to be true. Well, I've looked at the Sister Location game a lot, and I mean a lot. This was one I had actually never come by before until doing this video. The idea is that the death of Elizabeth Afton, where she gets scooped or, you know, gobbled up or whatever you want to call it by Circus Baby, is meant to be the bite of '83. This is because her death is believed to have taken place in 1983. However, it seems that she wasn't alone in perishing that year, if that's to be believed, because Crying Child also supposedly was bitten and later died in 1983, or was bitten in '83. I don't know if we really know when Crying Child died, but I'm assuming it was the same year. So is it possible that there were multiple bites? Or should we not even count Elizabeth? Do we consider what happened to her to be a bite at all? Typically, bite of '83 is attributed to Cece, but apparently there are those out there who believe that Elizabeth may actually be the death people are talking about when it comes to this still somewhat mysterious bite. Number 5, Afton's mistake. There are also a ton of theories when it comes to what caused Elizabeth's death. Was it a malfunction of the animatronic? Was it intentional? Many people attribute Elizabeth's death to William Afton, her father, suggesting that he perhaps even did it on purpose, possibly cracking, or that it was like an accident perhaps, due to faulty programming, or, you know, too good of programming maybe on his end. There are a lot of smaller theories at play when it comes to the belief that Afton was the one ultimately responsible. Possibly he had designed Circus Baby to trap other children, but then why say that he designed Circus Baby for Elizabeth? Did he mean to kill her? Or was it just that the programming in Circus Baby was too strong and, you know, still needed some tweaking, some reining in, so the death was perhaps accidental? Number 4, Afton's intentions. Let's imagine for a moment that William Afton loved his kids and that he didn't want anything bad to happen to Elizabeth. It's believed that Crying Child's death happens after Elizabeth's in regards to the whole timeline of this narrative. But what if we have that wrong and it somehow happened before? It could be possible that Afton simply wanted to lure another child using Circus Baby so that he might take one to act as, I don't know, a sibling for Elizabeth, who was maybe lonely if her sibling had just died. Or it's possible that Cece's death did happen after, as we believe, but perhaps this was how Afton got his own children, like a sister or a sibling of some kind. After all, we're still not even sure as to why the killings happen in FNAF. That is a big question mark. What is happening with that? The killings could have even started as accidents, and we don't really know who the mother of these children is, if they have one. So it could be possible that Afton took them at young ages and kind of like brainwashed them into thinking he was their only parent, even though he wasn't their parent at all. Number 3, Elizabeth's death. Is it possible that Elizabeth's death wasn't William Afton's fault at all? What if Circus Baby was tampered with and this is ultimately why she killed Elizabeth? It's believed that before Elizabeth died, in the same year no less, Charlie was also killed. Charlie is the daughter of Henry Emily, aka Cassette Man, who was also at one point William Afton's partner. Although it seems unlikely at this point, it's possible that Henry was actually the one to blame for Elizabeth's death, and could have sabotaged Circus Baby as a means of getting revenge on William for the death of Henry's own daughter, Charlie, which many believe Afton was actually behind. Number 2. Ballora is Mrs. Afton. Another theory that ran rampant and still is pondered and reflected on even today is the role of Ballora. People believed, based on the lyrics of the song that she sings, that Ballora may actually be the wife of William Afton, or at least was made to represent his wife after she left him or possibly died. This woman could also be the mother to his children. Ballora was perhaps created to fill the void of the woman he loved so much. Or if you want to interpret this character a lot more literally, perhaps she is the mother of his children, who are maybe all animatronics that he built, and Ballora sort of like filled a mother role for them. Although I will say there's not a lot of evidence to support that in regards to how Ballora seems to act with the other animatronics, but hey. Number 1. Clara is Mrs. Afton. Some others believe that Clara is meant to represent Mrs. Afton, suggesting that the soap opera Eggs Benedict, aka Michael Afton watches on his day off, Immortal and the Restless, is actually meant to represent the story of William Afton and his romantic partner. In this story, the main character meant to represent William is a vampire named Vlad, who denies that Clara's child is his, despite the fact that the child has lots of odd behaviors that only a vampire baby would likely be capable of. This could suggest that William was the one that attempted to abandon Clara, but if that is the case, then how did he end up looking after his children? How did that happen? Was he resentful of having to take care of them, and that's perhaps why they met untimely ends? Is it possible that it was all part of William's plot to get rid of them? Are Clara and Vlad meant to even represent Mrs. Afton and William? I don't even know. It's a lot. I think at this point I'm leaning more towards no, but I don't know. I always come back to this and I'm like, is it true? Is it not true? Supposed to be a symbol of this or not? What do you think are some of the most important and relevant theories from Sister Location?
In 10, Mangle was made from Ennard. Okay, this isn't really a popular theory, or it wasn't a popular theory. In fact, most people hated this theory, but this theory suggests that Mangle was actually made after the events that occurred in the minigames of Sister Location, where Michael Afton barfs up last night's helping of Ennard's spaghetti. This theory seems to point out that Ennard now has plenty of loose and missing parts that could be used to make Mangle. I mean, this is the kind of thing that Scott would have done, but it was also revealed that Baby was kicked out and then she reassembled herself in FNAF 6, and then Ennard became Molten Freddy. So I don't think it has literally any footing at this point anymore, but it's an interesting theory nonetheless. Even if you hate the theory, you kind of believe that it would end up being a thing, even just a little bit. Okay, if I had seen this theory before the other reveals of FNAF 6, I would have probably believed it. Nightmare Ballora. Nightmare Ballora is a piece of work, holy crap. With thin like needles and that signature torn and battered Nightmare aesthetic, this is what I expect when I think about a Nightmare version of a character we have already seen. However, I'm getting some serious Fuerza from Flash Season 7 vibes here, especially from this image posted onto the FNAF subreddit by user Demolition Inevitable. And the rest of these are just terrifying, okay? Even the ones that most people would consider bad are actually messed up. This is the first animatronic on this list that really made me feel unsafe, and it ain't Ignited Funtime Freddy. Ah yes, a throwback to the meta numbers. A fan edit of a fan game. The Ignited animatronics from the fan game The Joy of Creation, a game where you play as Scott Cawthon and his family after he retires from FNAF and the animatronics come after him. Uh-oh, that sounds frighteningly familiar. But these animatronics are more destroyed than their previous counterparts, basically having their withered versions be set on fire, as I guess they tried to escape the hellscape that is the FNAF world. So that in essence is what Ignited Funtime Freddy looks like. Take a withered version of Funtime Freddy and then set them on fire and you'll basically have Ignited Funtime Freddy. With missing exosuit, casing on his legs pretty much every time, and other exposed bits of endoskeleton. Scott would be glad that at least in the game's universe he ended it before Sister Location was even a thought, since even Bon Bon is after him this time. And we all know how that's gonna end. And at 7, Springlich. Springlich was meant to appear in the FNAF fan game Dormitibus, another game that I love to come back to in order to find scary animatronics. There wasn't much planned for Springlich, but he was present in the Dormitibus beta. Modeled by Golden Nexus, Springlich is a green version of what seems to be Scraptrap, with similar proportions to the head. However, this game was released before FNAF 6, so that's probably just a coincidence. Springlich's head is on backwards, meaning that he walks backwards while looking at you, and this was planned to be part of his minigame, since it would then make it possible for him to be tripped and stumble to actually like kinda get away. The character appears to be a spring-lock victim, but with not much remaining on the inside. However, you can also see scratches and tears on the outside, like with all worn-down animatronics. Someone needs to use better fabric for these guys. And at 6, Shadow Spring Bonnie. Shadow Spring Bonnie is one of the 2 primary antagonists of Final Nights 2. He is also one of the final animatronics in the game. Shadow Spring Bonnie resembles Springtrap, as to be expected when mentioning spring-lock suits, and similar to Springtrap, he lacks the suit on his feet and has a majority of his right ear missing. Overall, he has rips, but he's not really missing any limbs or parts at all, which is a stark contrast to the burnt animatronics from the first 4 nights of that game. His face glows white, which is notable when he's in the hallway, but also gives him a more sinister appearance, and pushes that something supernatural idea like most Shadow animatronics have, like Shadow Bonnie from FNAF AR. Shadow Spring Bonnie takes the roles of Burnt Freddy and Burnt Foxy on night 5, so he's very fast and the player has to seal the vent quickly or else they'll get jump scared, and he also may appear in the hallway. Although you can never use the flashlight on this character, otherwise you'll get insta-kill. Inspect his face when he appears outside the door though, and if he's twitching, you'll need to close the door. A rattling sound will let you know when he's on the left, but the fact that you need to look at his face to see if you're in danger is horrifying, especially when most of what you need to do in these games relies on fast reflexes. Halfway through into number 5, Reaper Puppet. Ah yes, my arch nemesis, the Reaper Puppet. If you didn't know, the Reaper Puppet was the first fan animatronic ever featured on this channel. The first FNAF video by me on the channel was on January 29, 2020 though. Can you believe that? It's been nearly 2 years. And the video I'm talking about came out a month later on February 24th, 2020. So I have a long history with this character. The Reaper Puppet, along with Shadow Bonnie and the brother from Final Nights 1, are the only animatronics in the entire Final Nights series to start off the night outside. Reaper Puppet appears to be a counterpart to the original series puppet, though it is only the Reaper Puppet's head that is similar to the core series puppet. The rest of its body is dark shades of black, and it has a long, stretching arms with sharp fingers at its hand. It's like the Grim Reaper, okay? Like a Reaper Puppet. He has multiple tentacle-like legs as well, which only makes me more sus. The Reaper Puppet can easily be mistaken for a tree, and its legs are like long roots and the shoulders look like branches, but this thing is so creepy and I always include it on this list. But I was so creeped out when I first saw this animatronic. Like how kids in Fazbear Frights are drawn to the restaurants, I'm drawn to the Reaper Puppet. And at 4, Slasher Fredbear. Slasher Fredbear by DeviantArt user PlayStation Jedi is an unholy abomination that must be stopped. I've talked about the Slasher animatronics before, particularly in the Bonnie alternate versions list. However, Slasher Fredbear is so much worse. He may not have a shotgun axe guitar, but oh my god. Let me read the description of this animatronic in the words of PlayStation Jedi himself. Quote, "The largest and strongest of all Slasher animatronics, Slasher Fredbear is an unstoppable force with enhanced strength and durability. Fredbear is capable of smashing through walls, withstanding lots of punishment, and grabbing heavy objects and throwing them across the room. While Fredbear uses his great strength to pick up and rip people in half, if he needs a quick kill, he can extend a blade mounted to his wrist to cut through people like butter. Or if he needs a ranged attack, he can use his 2 wrist-mounted LMG guns. Fredbear can switch between these weapons on the fly, either using 2 LMG guns, 2 blades, or 1 on each wrist." What the actual fuck? LMG stands for light machine gun, by the way, okay? Holy mother Christ. Like, this guy is going to make me cry myself to sleep, not to mention the spikes covering his body and the incredible amount of blood soaking him, because of course he does. Of course he needs it. And at 3, Sinister Baby. The Sinister animatronics have become somewhat of a staple on these lists for me now, and I mean, it's clear why. While the original Baby is sinister in scheme, this one just looks like it's going to rip your guts out and get inside you, and not in a fun way. The real look to these kinds of things is basically like a repaired Nightmare animatronic, with a clean exterior but the sharp teeth of a nightmare. Now, I'm not too sure if this is another fan-made character based off the fan game, or if it was actually going to be in the main fan game that has the Sinister animatronics, but at the very least, Sinister Baby is based on the unfinished and unreleased fan game Sinister Turmoil. And while we got 2 basically demo games to play before the game was ultimately cancelled, we never really got to see this animatronic in action if it wasn't made by a fan of the game. It's terrifying, it's horrific, and it's worthy of the top 3. And ultimately, in at number 2, Havoc Chica. Do I even need to explain? Havoc Chica, aka Maria, is a Havoc animatronic that hails from the Dormitibus universe. She is the Havoc version of Chica, obviously, and is a failed attempt by the Havoc puppet to give her spirit a physical form. While having the same color scheme as Chica, the two look nothing alike, thankfully. The mask Havoc Chica wears has a good amount of damage done to it. Her right eye socket has grown in size, arching upwards towards her feathers. The rest of her mask has small withering in a few places, mainly near her right eye socket and her forehead. She has no eyes, resulting in her being blind. Her jaw isn't directly connected to her head like the Chica from FNAF 1. Instead, her jaw looks more like her withered counterpart. Her jaw, in addition to this, has withering on both sides of it and some towards the front. Her entire head is attached to a suitless limb segment, making her head stick out from her body, and it's grotesque and nauseating to look at. She looks like this. Finally, in at number 1, Sinister Freddy. Sinister Freddy, while potentially being the thumbnail for this video, was also intended on releasing with the cancelled Sinister Turmoil fan game. Instead of the full game, however, we got Sinister Turmoil Sewers, which is a small section of what would have been the full game. Sinister Freddy is a brown animatronic bear with a lighter shade of brown on his stomach, snout, and the insides of his ears. He appears to have damage on his suit, but still has the sharp teeth and no eyes. His whole suit appears to be severely withered, having large rips and tears on several pieces of his body, and Sinister Freddy sports large needle-like weapons on his wrists, kinda like hidden blades, but they're not hidden at all. He also appears to have small geometrically shaped claws and nails. Sinister Freddy also has a mouth with sharp teeth, as per usual, and some under his body that you can actually see if you look really closely, but you don't want to get too close, otherwise he's gonna bite your head off like Pennywise. I don't like it, but it's absolutely terrifying and deserved to be number 1, even over the Dormitibus animatronics, so yeah. And at 10, anatomically correct Ennard. Okay, no joke, I find this actually terrifying. Like a realistic metal zombie in a way. Anatomically correct Ennard is best described by its name. It's a version of Ennard where the metal parts that surround his body, his innards I guess, are actually anatomically correct. Like they would form what looks like actual muscles. So there's more around the chest and they're like in the direction that like the muscle tendons and stuff would be under your skin. And that makes it horrifying and just terribly uncomfortable to look at, especially his face. And like, you know that, you stare at my face all day in videos, like, you get what I mean. I don't know what it is about this Ennard's face, but like, without the mask, he just looks like a terrifying villain out of a Scooby-Doo movie, but like more realistic. Like, if the latest iteration of like the live-action Scooby Gang with like Robbie Amell as Fred Jones had gotten a 3rd movie, and they actually tried to make it scary, this is what they would be. Like, why is this necessary? Who felt compelled to make this, and why did you subject me to it as well? Look, I'm sorry if you didn't know about this, but whoever made it, it's their fault, not mine. Wait, if it's anatomically correct, does that mean it has a... And at 9, Ennard. Or could the Stitch Wraith be Ennard? Well, basically, this has been confirmed as false since it seems the Stitch Wraith story takes place after the events of FNAF 6, where the rest of Ennard, now known as Molten Freddy, gets burned in the final fire, but perhaps the original intention was to have Ennard live on, as was implied by his minigame in FNAF VR. At the end of Ennard's vent repair, you activate a boiler that also causes something to scream. You assume that the thing screaming is Ennard, getting burned and turned into scrap. However, he jump scares you just moments after this scream. Was that seen to indicate that Ennard actually survived the fire like William did? Or was it just because we thought that we'd be safe after the scream, making that jump scare one of the most effective? Or is it because at the beginning, Ennard was going to play a bigger role than we suspected? And at 8, main villain. Could the Stitch Wraith become the next main villain of the series once William finally kicks that remnant-filled bucket? Is it possible that this creature, powered by the intense agony of multiple individuals, will be the next mission we see our characters on, until we can finally put an end to this nightmare? Actually, it's unclear, since to my knowledge the character hasn't really been introduced into the game series, so if they were to become the new main villain, it would come out of nowhere, unless they get introduced via security breach or make an appearance in the Fazbear Fanverse Initiative game like FNAF Plus for example, which also seems plausible, because while he may always come back, I feel like the William Afton storyline is kinda running a bit dry. Like, sure, we love to hate this guy, but without something new and fresh, especially with a new owner being introduced soon enough, we will most likely have to leave FNAF in the past. So something new is bound to be incoming. Like, if every Elder Scrolls game had like the Daedric Lord Dagon as the antagonist, we wouldn't really have cared when it came to Skyrim. It's the same idea here. And at 7, Golden Freddy. The Stitch Wraith is also where the whole two souls theory started for Golden Freddy. Some believe that the Stitch Wraith is a representation of Golden Freddy, and that the Stitch Wraith's two souls mean that Golden Freddy has two souls. I mean, I don't know where that leap in logic came from, but it's widely accepted now despite there not really being much evidence for it, aside from circumstantial evidence that's built on other unconfirmed theories. But honestly though, that's most of the series at this point, having theories built off of other theories, but for some reason, people never enjoy mine. Anyway, when it was revealed that the Stitch Wraith was able to have two souls inside him after the man in room 1280, this led to the conclusion that this must have been the case with Golden Freddy. Evidence being the Stitch Wraith, the survival logbook, and the 2-eye theory involving FNAF 3's bad ending, which I've already debunked. So, yeah. And at 6, Afton Endo. Where did the Stitch Wraith's endoskeleton come from? It's a question nobody quite has the answer to, but I have a pretty insane theory that I absolutely love the idea of. At this point, I am convinced that Michael Afton was a robot at the time of Sister Location and maybe even before that. He may not have been a rebuilt Crying Child, but he was certainly a robot. So, since this endoskeleton seems to be an older model from the way it's described, could this endoskeleton be the one that was inside Mike for the games we were playing as him? It would make a lot of sense. That endoskeleton would be full of agony at that point, after being scooped and dealing with literally everything else in this series, and sure, Mike supposedly burns in FNAF 6, but that doesn't mean that the endoskeleton was destroyed, that just means that his remnant was. So an endoskeleton that had recently been possessed by agony sounds like the absolute perfect base for an animatronic that revolves around shifting agony. And if the skeleton did survive, which let's be honest it probably would, because I don't think a building catching on fire would be hot enough to melt the metal that was used for an endoskeleton, or at least an endoskeleton that was supposed to be for a human, and it already having agony inside it makes it seem like it would have an easier time accepting agony from other items later on. I'm just saying. It's probably not the case, but I mean, like, what a way to confirm that Mike was a robot, right? That would be cool. Halfway through, in at number 5, good guy? Could the Stitch Wraith possibly be a good guy? This kind of switcheroo would definitely appear to be par for the course for FNAF. But having an animatronic we think is bad but actually be a hero might even be a little too far for FNAF. I mean, we've had good animatronics be revealed as evil before, that animatronic being Baby, but I mean, that's cause it's FNAF, of course they're gonna be bad. Could the Stitch Wraith though really be good after all? To my knowledge, he's only killed Dr. Phineas Taggart, who was his creator, who was a man that was messing with life and death and was very similar to William Afton in that way, bringing life to things that shouldn't have it, so it would be understandable if this agony-fueled beast was thinking that he was helping by getting rid of another man like that. He also just seems to be collecting parts that have already met their demise instead of really offing them himself. He collects that girl's limbs after Baby had already removed them and to be beautiful. He collects the Psycho plush trap after it was destroyed by a train. I mean, like, maybe this guy isn't so bad after all. You gotta remember that the animatronics aren't really the bad guys here. They just want justice to be served to their killer, even if they have to do it themselves. And if we do play as Mike, he does look like his dad, who was their killer. So their actions in my book are justified. If I was killed by someone and then came back, I'd sure as hell want to kill the guy who killed me if I got the chance. So, yeah. I understand the animatronics. I sympathize with them. In at 4, new books. Other fans believe, or I guess hope, that the introduction of the Stitch Wraith will lead to the release of a new novel trilogy or series involving him as the main antagonist, which is something even I think is possible. The Stitch Wraith was introduced into the series by books, and the character has remained in the Fazbear Fright series aside from a few theories placing him elsewhere, so unless the Stitch Wraith shows up in Security Breach, it's entirely possible that the character will stay in the novels, with a new series or trilogy of maybe even exclusively graphic novels to keep the character alive. Because at this point, we don't really know this character's purpose or true intentions. They could secretly be a good guy for all we know, like I just mentioned. So maybe this new potential series of books would revolve around the Stitch Wraith being a force for good, or at least the protagonist, because the protagonist doesn't always have to be a good guy. Take Lolita for example. An incredibly messed up character is the protagonist of that book. But since he is the protagonist, you end up feeling sorry for him despite him being an absolutely awful human. That's also just because of the way it's written. It's like a literary thing. I couldn't read it, but I know someone who did. Getting close to the end, in at number 3, the arm. The arm in the final seconds of the security breach gameplay trailer is one of the most controversial moments in FNAF history. Some swear it's William Afton, others swear it's the Stitch Wraith, since, like I've been saying, he hasn't yet been introduced into the games. I mean, this could be the perfect time to do so, since Afton's storyline could be on its last legs. But would that really make any sense? Earlier, I used the excuse of someone new taking over the IP as a reason to introduce a new villain, but the same could be said as a counter to that. If someone new comes in and changes the main antagonist of the IP, I'm sure plenty of people would riot. I'm even sure that some of you were thinking it or even commenting it after I suggested it. So could that arm really be the Stitch Wraith? It's a possibility, but I find it highly unlikely, especially because of the purple light that you can see reflected off the arm, since that color is definitely associated with William rather than the Stitch Wraith. And ultimately, in at number 2, Freddy and Friends. The recently released Freddy and Friends On Tour Episode 1 short on the Steel Wool Studios YouTube channel has some interesting moments to say the least. One of the most interesting being about 22 seconds in, when the screen glitches during a simple walking scene, revealing a face that could easily be described exactly like the Stitch Wraith was in the epilogues. To quote the wiki, the mask features are drawn on in thick black marker. It has 2 eyes, one of which is blackened. It sports a toothy grin with a missing tooth, and something appears to be stuck between its front teeth. It also appears to have blood around its mouth, but it is actually meant to be pizza sauce. While one of the eyes may not be blacked out, it certainly looks like this could be the real face of the Stitch Wraith, or at least how we would see it if it was in the real world, you know, like if it was actually realistic instead of a video game. And finally, in at number 1, William's Vessel. What if everything is right though? What if the arm is the Stitch Wraith's but it also is William's? What if all the alluding that we've been seeing is right? What if the robot William will inevitably possess is actually the Stitch Wraith? In my breakdown for Freddy and Friends, I did mention that not even 1 second into the video we get a flash of purple. That combined with the seemingly random Stitch Wraith screen in that video 20 seconds later seems to indicate to me that the two may be related, which would honestly make so much sense, and probably it's gonna end up being the best of both worlds for people who want to see the Stitch Wraith introduced and those who still want Afton to keep on kicking for a few more games. This entire thing seems like it could be building to that reveal, and that maybe William was the one who sent Phineas Taggart, the Stitch Wraith's creator, on a mission to discover what agony really does and how to control it. Maybe William needs the agony of the Stitch Wraith to help possess it and gain full control, since, you know, he's currently sentient code and we don't quite know how anything in the FNAF universe operates until it happens. Like those goddamn doors.
Number 10, Michael Afton. So when you start playing Sister Location, one of the first things you are asked to do is enter your name, almost as a joke that this more free roam game is going to be like an RPG where you can name and possibly customize your character. This joke part comes from the fact that, guess what, you can't really actually do this at all, because when you go to enter your name on the keypad, whatever you wanted it to be becomes null and void, and instead you are given the name Eggs Benedict because the hand unit is apparently malfunctioning. Throughout the game though, hints are dropped that lead fans to believe that Eggs Benedict is really none other than Michael Afton from a narrative standpoint. Michael Afton is the son of William Afton, and it's also theorized that he came to this place to do something very specific. Number 9, rating. The rating for the film is definitely something many of us have pondered on. Many people love FNAF, including younger kids, with that being a consideration who the targeted demographic is for this film, and the varied ages in terms of its fan base, because I mean, it's not just kids, a lot of us love FNAF. It is possible that we'll see the rating of this film be lowered for this reason, in terms of what they'll be allowed to actually show. It makes the most sense that it'll be PG or PG-13 for this reason. If that is the case, the film will have to be careful in terms of what it shows or even implies, as a PG rating means that only some of the content is allowed to even be considered unsuitable for kids. Only some, and even considered. So many of the themes that we see in the games will have to be modified, cut, or made less scary somehow. The other theory with the rating is that we'll get one that more promotes and allows for the level of horror that we would expect, but in that case the film would have to be a little bit more exclusive, with most children probably not being allowed to go see it. Either way, it seems we're going to have a problem when it comes to what is in the film in terms of horror components and who can actually go see it. And friends, before we move on to our next spot in the video, if you want to see this movie and you are concerned about the rating, or you're just like, let me see it, be sure to give us a thumbs up. It's true, when you give this video a thumbs up, it actually increases the speed at which the FNAF movie is produced. Number 8. Part of the multiverse. It's really hard to contemplate the potential for this film to be canon. I mean, we have all the Fazbear Frights books, and I mean there's also more coming, and it really depends on who you talk to as to what level of canon they consider those books to be, if they include them in the game canon at all. I personally feel like while there are contradictions between the world of the books and the world of the games, it is possible that both of these could exist within the same world if we just acknowledge the existence of a FNAF multiverse. Then everything gets to be relevant, and some things can even overlap in terms of similar stories and explanations for characters. With the film, we could also see the introduction of a new universe belonging to the FNAF multiverse. That then not only gives us answers, but also helps us to connect the dots, as well as undoubtedly giving us more questions. Because, this is still FNAF after all while being able to connect to the games and book canon, while still being able to have enough differences to keep us guessing and interested. Give me a FNAF multiverse, let's acknowledge it. Number 7. Stitch Wraith? Another theory that I have is that we will actually get to see some crossover between the books and the film, with the appearance of the villain known as Stitch Wraith. In fact, I'm even thinking we might not see Stitch Wraith in the games until after their appearance in the film. The Stitch Wraith, being a seemingly methodical villain, could make for a good ally for a mastermind who is working behind the scenes and pulling all the strings. Stitch Wraith might not have as big of a role in the film, but appear in a post-credits scene and help to set up a FNAF franchise, being an important villain shrouded in mystery, whose true purpose and master is revealed later on down the line. Kinda like we see in the books. Number 6. Springtrap. One of the scariest animatronics around is definitely Springtrap, which is the hybrid suit that William Afton wore and later found himself trapped in when he was spring-locked and impaled while wearing it. Springtrap is the main antagonist of Five Nights at Freddy's 3. In FNAF 3 we face hallucinations which can terrorize us, as well as the very real threat of Springtrap, which comes with William Afton's body inside it, controlling the suit. Just the idea of a human being who became impaled by a bunch of springs and mechanics and trapped within a suit, each step creating agonizing pain as those locks and springs grind against your bones, is horrific. Also, just the visual image of an animatronic that seems to be oozing something bodily, some blood or pus with real eyes, it creates a powerful and haunting visual that would make for a compelling villain throughout the film. I'm just saying. Number 5. FNAF 1. The film will take inspiration from the first game, at least that's what we've been led to believe. This theory has been based around things Scott Cawthon said on Reddit and suggested the main protagonist of the film will be the security guard that we play as in the first game, and will expand on his story. The security guard is named Mike Schmidt, and many believe that this is an alias that is actually used by Michael Afton, William's son, who accepted the job for a yet unconfirmed purpose, but one that is highly speculated to be heroic or investigatory in nature. As such, the film is believed to have centered around Michael Afton, who will of course become the protagonist and possibly hero of this story. Number 4. Scott Cawthon plays Phone Guy. Obviously, we are all going to lose our minds if we don't get a Scott cameo or Easter egg somewhere in this film, but if we are going the way of FNAF 1, I think it would only be fitting if Scott reprised his role of Phone Guy, personally. He could of course just provide the voice for the character, who we may also never see in the film, just like in the game, but I think we are all hoping and expecting to see his face show up somewhere on screen, even if it's only briefly. I personally know I would love to at least get a single scene with Scott as Phone Guy where we see what ended up happening to him, or simply get a tease as to his gruesome fate on screen. There are a lot of ways that Scott as Phone Guy could make an appearance that would be satisfying and entertaining. Number 3. The franchise. If the FNAF movie focuses on FNAF 1, most people also expect, like with the games and books, we could see more films planned out, depending on the success of this one of course. Ideally, this FNAF movie could be a jumping off point for a whole series of films and a film franchise based around the games and even books at some point as well. It is possible that with this film, Scott and the studio could already be setting stuff up that will come into play later down the line, not just considering this film as a standalone story, but as a piece to a much larger, more intricate puzzle, like we've seen with other successful video game inspired film franchises and comics inspired film franchises besides. Number 2. Bite of 87. Another idea for the film is that it will be the precursor to FNAF 1 and simply focus on it in terms of setting it up. We could see the beginnings of the restaurant be its focus, or at least see an element of that included, perhaps focusing on the mystery of the Bite of 87. And maybe we'll also get like a younger Mike in this movie, and also answering the mysteries behind the Bite of 87. This could be the film that sets up the world and with it establishes a more clear narrative in terms of the accidents that took place and who is at fault. It is also weird that I would actually be really into a sort of murder mystery vibe for a film that dives into the Bite of 87. Is that weird? Was it Mangle? I mean, I need to know. I have so many questions. Things are still unclear. Just give me a movie that explains the timeline. That would be magic to me. Number 1. William Afton's origins. One of the things that I feel like would be the most earth-shattering if it were to appear would be the origin story for William Afton. It would be amazing if we got a film centered on him and his life, which helped us to understand just why he became a murderer and what his motives are. Was Afton a well-intentioned business owner and family man and something happened to him? Or did he always have more sinister intentions when it came to the Fazbear franchise? Is his story real? Or does it perhaps only exist in video games made by the company who created Help Wanted and who are interested in simply sensationalizing an accident that happened at a real restaurant? It would be crazy if it turned out to be that meta of reasoning as to like why he exists, but in a weird way it could also make a lot of sense and solve a lot of like weird plot holes that we have. Either way, if we get some hints even to this huge question mark that is William Afton and why he kills, that would be amazing.